Каково это быть первым космонавтом своей страны?
Просто жизнь, судьба такова.
Is there a place for fear?
The question is whether you can step through it.
Being bored is very dangerous.
Космос и Земля должен служить друг другу.
But we are actually dependent on space.
So there is no place for competition.
Competition ends when you are selected as an astronaut.
You have to be really precise. You have to be really responsible.
The astronauts wear diapers.
We were completely separated from the outside world.
Robots and AI will never have that same kind of inspirational power on people.
Сегодняшний выпуск о космосе. В этом эпизоде говорим о венгерской компании Huner, Hungarian to Orbit, национальной инициативе, которая возвращает Венгрию в число стран, активно участвующих в международных космических миссиях, включая проекты нового поколения. Наши гости — это люди, для которых космос не абстракция, а профессия и путь длиной в жизнь. Сегодня у меня в гостях Берталан Фаркаш, первый венгерский космонавт и человек, который в 1980 году сделал Венгрию 7-й страной мира, отправивший своего представителя в космос. Тибор Капу, исследователь-астронавт программы Huner, инженер и участник подготовки к современным международным миссиям. И Дюла Черени, резервный исследователь-астронавт, инженер-электрик, представляющий новое поколение венгерской космонавтики. Welcome, добро пожаловать. И мы говорим о том, что такое космос сегодня, какую роль играет международное сотрудничество и где проходит граница между человеком и технологиями, как меняется взгляд на Землю, когда видишь ее из космоса. Подписываемся на канал, оставляем комментарии. Поехали. Конечно, мы начнем с легенды. Надеюсь, ребята не против. Берталан, расскажите нам, пожалуйста, каково это быть первым космонавтом своей страны? Как это было? И был ли такой момент, когда вы почувствовали, вот он я, лечу в космос?
Конечно, это не сегодня и не вчера был. Это 45 лет тому назад был. Я, откровенно говоря, никогда не хотел стать летчиком-истребителем, и никогда не хотел стать летчиком для космоса, космонавтом. Просто жизнь, судьба такова, что не мечтаю об этом, а потом получается. Я закончил авиационное училище в Советском Союзе и в 1972 году стал уже настоящим летчиком-истребителем венгерской армии. И в 1976 году начался выбор космонавтов в Венгрии, потому что получили разрешение и возможность со стороны советского правительства. И после Чехословакии, Германии и ГДР, так называлась ГДР, и, конечно, и в Венгрии тоже начался выбор. Нас было 240 летчиков-истребителей, были совершенно молодые и были более-менее, которые уже советские ученые, специалисты сказали, что их уже не надо в космос посылать по возрасту. И я родился в 1949 году и как раз попал в эту группу, из которых выбрали из 95, потом 27, потом 11, потом 7, потом 4. Приехали сюда, в звездный городок, в Москву, 4 венгерских кандидатов, и потом получились 2. И в конце концов в 80-м году с командиром Маленнико Ачкубасовым стал пассажиром-космонавтом Союз-36. 8 был в космосе, и 8-дневной работы вернулись оба на Земле. 3 июня. Ну, конечно, это был даже непонятная ситуация мне в жизни. И с тех пор я решил оставаться именно в этой прекрасной отрасли. Ну, то есть, может быть, даже хотели еще второй раз летать, но просто ситуация была совершенно другая, не получилось. Но я очень-очень много приглашений получаю постоянно в течение 45 лет везде по всему миру. Пригласили и рассказывали, что мы делали в космосе.
И мы рады, что вы сегодня здесь делитесь своими впечатлениями с нами.
Спасибо большое за приглашение.
Да, спасибо вам. Расскажите, пожалуйста, как вы считаете, в чем разница космонавтов тогда, в 1980-м, и космонавтов сегодня? Вот я смотрю на этих красивых молодых людей. Как вы считаете, в чем разница? Есть ли разница в подготовке? Есть ли разница в процессах?
Но об этом довольно серьезно разговаривали с ними. Но совершенно не похож. Подготовка, как было в то время, а как в это время. Но я думаю, что прошло 45 лет, как мы об этом говорили, техника изменилась, совершенно другие условия были в то время, но я был 94-м в мире в это время, а Тибор стал 621-м космонавтом всего мира.
Обалдеть.
Да. И поэтому и подготовка, и весь процесс именно стать там космонавтом совершенно не одно и то же. Молодые совершенно по другим условиям готовились они. И нам нужно было все знать о Союзе. Все. И очень много 2 года готовились к этому. И, конечно, нет, была очень серьезная цель, чтобы вот те научные исследования исполнить, которые дали нам именно со стороны Венгрии ученые, потом те люди, которые занимались именно с космонавтикой. И когда закончили вот эту поездку в космос, стало мне очень интересным. И даже сейчас, в настоящее время, очень много приглашений получаю от молодых. Конечно, сейчас они совершенно молодые, они тоже могут очень много разговаривать уже. Мы вместе попробуем друг другу помогать и вместе вот эти прекрасные, чудесные вещи передать молодым поколениям. Это самое главное, потому что молодежь – это всегда будущее. Это я сам почувствовал. Когда я летал, их не было вообще, еще не родились. И сейчас они уже для молодежи тоже очень...
Сейчас они тоже уже бороздят космос.
Да, совершенно правильно.
Спасибо большое. Тибор, your turn.
Thank you.
As I know, you come from engineering, pharma and logistics.
Yes.
Looking back, which non-space skill unexpectedly turned out to be the most useful on your path to becoming an astronaut?
That's a very interesting question, and thank you for that. First of all, thank you for having us here. This is a wonderful, wonderful event. And when you guys were speaking before, I just realized that that even if we have some language barriers, obviously we all speak Hungarian, but you guys were speaking Russian, we are speaking English. I think these are all wonderful conversations when we can overcome these language barriers. And you are the bridge between us, and you are the one who are connecting us to the viewers of and listeners of Kazakhstan. So I feel really happy to be here right now. I had a few jobs before we applied to the Honor program. When we applied, it was 2022, end of January. And I just remember that Bertan was also saying some words regarding the selection. We started with the 247 people, and then 100, and then 44, 25, 8, and 4 of us. The 4 of us, that was after 14 months of selection process. And then the 4 of us astronaut candidates, we started another 14 months, which was still part of the selection, but also some kind of basic training. So altogether it was 28 months to select me as the lucky one and Gyula as my backup. The reason I'm telling is that that beautiful day was a Sunday afternoon, actually, or Sunday night. It was 2024, 26th of May. And that's the same date when Bertalan Farkas was flying to space only 44 years before. So it was really, really wonderful. And we did not plan like that. It was just, it was the sign of the universe, I guess, or, stars were lined. So coming back to your question, when we applied, we had to have some years of work experience. And I collected that with several jobs, as you mentioned. I was working in pharmaceuticals, some chemistry, some food industry, but mainly engineering. It was so every job that I did before, it was connected by some sort of engineering that I learned in the university. I guess the best answer is that wherever I went during my venture, I went to Belgium for a year, I went to California to work there for half a year. I was always surrounded by very good people. When you meet all those people and you learn a lot from them, you realize that you develop some social skills that are definitely needed to be an astronaut. So when they select us, there are many filters, psychological and physiological and so on, cognitive as well. But lying beneath the hood, you need special soft skills, I guess, and socializing skills are definitely one of those. And the other one might be problem solving. And maybe decision making, but I would go towards problem solving, maybe mainly. In all kinds of jobs, you have to solve problems and maybe see things from a helicopter view, see the big picture. I think those are definitely the skills that you need as an astronaut, and I was very lucky to learn from the best, during each of my career steps before Hunor, and also learn from the best bosses that I had.
How did you decide to change the field?
So I finished my master's in the University of Technology and Economics of Budapest. I finished my master's in 2016, and that was the year when SpaceX started to really basically realize their dreams and make reusable rockets. So, first stage boosters that come back and land on their legs. And that's a technology that made spaceflight 10 times cheaper in the past 10 years. It's basically an engineering marvel. So when I finished my university, that's when they started to do these, and I just realized that such an engineering challenge can actually change the world. So I became more and more interested, even so that in 2019, when I went to California to work half year there, I was actually very lucky to see one launch, actually to experience one launch. At that time, this was 2019, they had only 2 launches from Vandenberg. This is in California, and I was there for half year, so I had only one chance to visit a rocket launch, and it was so foggy I didn't see anything. I just heard what the rocket was doing. I have only 11 minutes of GoPro footage, completely gray, but the sound is great. So I slowly became a rocket enthusiast over the years. And then the end of 2021, October 2021, the government basically announced that they are selecting astronauts. And the last day of the application was the end of January 2022. At that point, I was already a rocket enthusiast and a space enthusiast. I checked all the things that they wanted to the requirements that they stated that we have to have those. So I thought that this could be a missed opportunity if I don't apply. If if I don't apply, and few years back, few years after, I will look back, I could regret that decision. So instead of that, I applied because I didn't want to miss the opportunity, and that was a really great decision.
Great, thank you. You worked on space radiation protection,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges in the modern missions. What is the biggest misconception people have about radiation in space?
I think the biggest misconception, and this is a very great question, the biggest misconception is to acknowledge if it exists or not. Because to put it very simply words, it is invisible. You cannot see it. And unfortunately, when we are living our everyday life here on Earth, we are protected by our atmosphere, and we are also protected by the magnetic field of Earth. So these are really two really strong protection layers against the cosmic radiation, the cosmic background radiation. So this is something that we don't really consider. Radiation comes in mind when we speak about nuclear things or some medical imaging process, X-rays, for example. But that's it. It's not part of our everyday life. But when you're an astronaut, it is really indeed part of your everyday life, because when you go to the ISS, the International Space Station, that's circling Earth 400 kilometers above the surface, so we are above the atmosphere. That protective layer is not there anymore for us. So we have actually a lot more radiation that we receive on the station than compared to the surface. And then when you want to go to the moon, or even to the Mars, which could be an opportunity for us in the next 20 or 30 years, the magnetic field is also not there anymore. So that's why we call those ventures deep space ventures, and the radiation is much, much, much greater there. So I wouldn't call it a biggest misconception, but radiation is definitely the biggest threat when you go to the moon or when you go to the Mars. So, moon is not super far away. It's like 400,000 kilometers from us. In a few days you can get there, and then in a few days you can come back. So the amount of radiation will not be as high or as much. But if you want to go to the Mars, that's like 2.5, 3 years. And that kind of radiation, for now, it can actually kill an astronaut before it reaches Mars.
Sounds unbelievable. Thank you. Dilo, your turn. What about your story? How did you decide to be an astronaut?
Oh, Tibor already told you the selection, which was really interesting for both of us. So I will start with how I applied. I was an electrical engineer, a high voltage electrical engineer. I was working a really traditional job. And I was listening to Tibor, and I was thinking about how different our lives were, and how our roads collided in the Hunor program, which was really interesting, because I didn't go abroad. I worked in one workplace in different positions, but in just one single factory in Hungary. And I had a family. I was really working a traditional life. And
then you opened the world and the universe.
Yeah, exactly. I had a lot of regrets in my life. And then there was an ESA selection, to European Space Agency selection, a couple of years earlier. And I didn't dare to apply for it. I was afraid of not making it. So when I heard about the Hunor program, I immediately knew that I don't want to live with that regret anymore, and I want to try myself out. And so I did this step, and this is something that is kind of new in my life at that point, that I do these steps, and I am brave enough to make changes in my life at that point. And so I signed up, and this is really easy, just signing up. And this is something that I learned in this way, is that we had a couple of hardships, and making such decisions are really hard, especially when you have a family, you have a son already. So these decisions are always hard, but you have to make the decisions, you have to make the small steps. And if you are taking the small steps, you can reach anywhere, even the stars.
Such a great stories, like a film Heroes. You spent years managing critical electrical infrastructure on Earth. What's the biggest difference between responsibility on the ground and responsibility in space?
Actually, I kind of always think that it's really similar.
Really?
Yes. Well, you are working in a team, and when we were working in that critical electrical network in that factory, so what I was doing, I was the main electrical engineer and the group leader of the maintenance group, meaning that anything that broke in the factory would, and if it stops the production of the factory, which was going every day all throughout the year, would be my responsibility. And it's an enormous factory, 6,000 people working there. So it was an important, responsible thing. But it was also a little dangerous because when you are working with electrical network, with big machinery, big transformers, that's the kind of stuff that when breaks down, it has lighting effects. It's really loud and it is dangerous. And you have to work in such an environment where you have a time pressure, you have big responsibility, not just money-wise, but which is more important, the human aspect is also. So it's a really big responsibility, and it's kind of similar to going to space and working on a space station. You have to be really precise. You have to be really responsible of what you do. If something breaks, you have a limited amount of time, and you especially have a limited amount of resources. So it's kind of similar in my opinion.
Interesting. You're a Spartan race athlete, fencer, and climber. Which of these best reflects the mindset required for space missions and why?
I would say that each of these sports gave me something that helped me on my road. Because space travel or being an astronaut is all about precision. You have to be able to follow all the instructions with a precise knowledge. You have to. That's for fencing, I think. But if you think about how many obstacles we came through with the selection, with the trainings, we did so many different trainings with survival trainings, isolation training, aerobatic flights. These were all hard, and especially hard for everyday people like us when we started on this road. These are similar to the obstacle races for me, because there is always one obstacle you have to go through, and so I think these sports really helped me. But if I had to choose one of those, I would go with the Spartan races because I like the long races, and we are doing marathons here with the astronaut program. And also with the obstacles, it really gives you the sense of, okay, I have to do this right now. This is my focus. You have to focus on something. But when you are done, there's the next obstacle.
Супер, thank you. Верталан, я возвращаюсь к вам. Я вижу, что вы заскучали. Расскажите, пожалуйста, каково это видеть Землю из космоса? Какие вот чувства испытываешь при этом?
Ну, с одной стороны, это очень интересный и очень простой вопрос, потому что все внизу люди, когда мы летали вчетвером из космоса, на Земле было 6 миллиардов, несколько тысяч еще людей. И мы были сверху, смотрели на них. И как хорошо было бы тогда все брать с собой и показывать им, что посмотрите на Землю оттуда. Наша высота была 350 километров. Это очень... Ну, это такая волнующий момент, когда первый раз смотришь оттуда. Я никогда не забуду тот очень прекрасные секунды, миллисекунды, когда первый раз с высоты 2240 километров после выведения, когда уже начинали уже космический полет, и первый раз, когда видел на Землю, уже были над тем океане, и Япония и восточная отрасли Советского Союза уже отошли, и точнее мы отошли от него. Это чудесная картина.
Меняется ли восприятие жизни? Как ты смотришь иначе потом на все?
Но я думаю, что все космонавты должны совершенно по-другому смотреть на Землю. И так как сегодня и уже несколько десятилетий тому назад мы должны понимать очень четко, что космос и Земля должен служить друг другу. А космос это относится ко всем людям. Там нельзя отделить, что это только для этих стран или кого, совершенно я просто не хочу называть. Надо соединяться и именно вместе дать возможность, чтобы получить очень много полезных ископаемых из Луны или с Марса, допустим, и дать очень много, попробовать ответить на те научные вопросы, которые стоят перед учеными. Тем больше знаем о нашем будущем, и тем больше вопросов будем задавать друг другу. И я уверен в том, что в настоящее время сейчас обязательно нужно как-то соединить друг к другу знания. И очень интересно именно в то время при нас и сейчас идет как бы борьба за то, что что-то впервые начинать именно в жизни. Но когда уже все получилось, тогда вот те знания, которые мы уже испытывали, передать другому. Самое главное именно, и о чем мы в Венгрии сейчас очень серьезно говорим, о том, что передать все очень большой опыт молодым людям, потому что и помогать им учиться, потому что наука, ученые, очень, как космос, требует очень прекрасно подготовленных людей. Без этого не получается.
Да, спасибо. И мы перешли к очень важной теме, которая касается международного сотрудничества.
Совершенно правильно.
Как вы видите, да, сейчас, вот какое место Венгрия занимает в вопросе освоения космоса вот именно в международном сотрудничестве?
Но именно очень хороший пример их сейчас в Тиборе Дюла. Это совершенно новая перспектива для венгерской науки, потому что мы тогда готовились 45 лет назад. Нам нужно было в первую очередь очень хорошо знать именно наш аппарат «Союз». И, конечно, нужно было все научные задачи выполнить в космосе. Их совершенно по-другому подготовили к этому. Есть очень хорошие приглашения для них, что брать 4 космонавта и астронавта на АСС, и они подготовились на Земле, и потом он лично, Тибор, выполнит те задания, которые им венгерские ученые попросили выполнить. И, конечно, после анализа вот этого полета будут и будем стараться именно то, что вот эта программа, которую начали, продолжалась дальше. Потому что нельзя, что полет закончился, и потом снова надо 45 лет ждать, чтобы следующий космонавт или астронавт полетел из Венгрии в космос. Нет. Нужно потихонечку побольше узнать и увидеть именно суть именно того, что почему стоит заниматься космическими делами именно в Венгрии. Венгрия очень маленькая страна, но очень хорошо, очень думающие, очень высоком уровне подготовленные люди есть именно в такой маленькой стране, как Венгрия.
Спасибо. We are talking about international cooperation in space exploration. And my next question is, you all represent different disciplines, but space missions are always a collective effort. What does collaboration between scientists and engineering from different countries look like during a mission?
So we tend to talk about our own science when we talk about our mission. We went to space with the mission called AX4, Axiom 4. I had a American commander from the US, Peggy Whitson. She's the most experienced American astronaut, both from females and males. She spent 695 days in space, almost 2 years of her life, which is crazy. And she had to fly with 3 rookies. One of them was me, and I also flew with an Indian astronaut, Shubhash Shukla, and Sławomir Uznanski-Wisniewski, who is from Poland. He was also a mission specialist like I am. Shuks was our pilot. So these are 4 different nations, right? And we all had our own goals to go to the ISS, to the International Space Station, and to conduct our own science. My science was basically 25 scientific experiments, all developed and collected by Hungarian researchers from universities and research groups and also companies. So I go there, and for that planned 2 weeks, I conduct Hungarian science. And Shuks will do Indian science, and Sławomir will do Polish science, and we all do our own stuff. But in the meantime, because this is a mission of 4 different nations, we also collaborate in certain scientific experiments where we can. So there are some life sciences that I can also contribute to India or Poland, and also Peggy as our commander. She is from the US. She had much more time to help us in our experiment, and also so these are interconnected things within a mission. So that's why.
So there is no place for competition.
No, definitely not. Basically, competition ends when you are selected as an astronaut, and as soon as you are selected, and then you get assigned to a mission. And we were very fortunate to fly with our Indian and Polish friends. That's when you are part of the same thing. You are part of the same boat. You are all rowing in the same direction. It doesn't matter who is in the front and who is in the back. We just have to, go on our same path. So competition doesn't exist anymore. We are a team from that point. So in practice, as I mentioned, we contribute to each other's sciences whenever it's possible. We also help each other when we are on board the ISS, and also when we are training for that. Within that 1 year in Houston was our base. We basically spend pretty much all the time together, and help each other to learn what's required in a NASA exam or a SpaceX exam, and those kind of stuff. So that's within the team. But the thing is that our colleagues who are behind us, they are also collaborating, and that's on a much more broader scale. That's already a global network. And 2 other things that I would like to mention. When we as a crew, we are training for this mission, we have to go to Cologne, Germany. We have to go to Tsukuba, Japan. We have to go to Los Angeles and Dallas and Philadelphia and Mexico as well, and Orlando, Florida. So we go to all kinds of spaces or places, and we meet all kinds of people, and who all have the same goal: to prepare this crew so they can go safely to space, do their own thing, and then come back safely. So, and that already holds the message that this is really a global collaboration, and thousands and thousands of people are working only for that 4 people can go up to space. So I think it holds a great value, and as soon as that happens, we have certain key players like Axiom Space. They were basically that private company who coordinated the whole mission. So through Axiom, we also collaborate towards their next adventures. These are definitely long-term things, and when a country like Hungary, which is definitely not the biggest country in the world, we spend time and effort to decide that a Hungarian guy will go to space. We don't do that so he goes there once. We do that so we basically establish much bigger things. So it's an investment, and so because that we could join this mission and meet all kind of global players, I think we have a much better chance to be an important player later on when it comes to space research.
Thank you. Dilo, what about you?
Well, Tibor told us a lot I wanted to mention, but I have a really good example of this collaboration and I wanted to share it with you. At one point of the mission, so Tibor was in space, one of our experiments was not working. So we prepared a lot beforehand, before the mission. Our team at HUNOR, with the scientists, with the European Space Agency as well, and as well as Axiom and NASA. And one of our experiments was not working. It was an IT issue with two really special IT devices. I don't want to go into the details because of the science part, but the problem is that it was not working. And at one point, we really tried to troubleshoot. Tibor tried to troubleshoot it on board. Then NASA, Huntsville, wanted to troubleshoot it from the Earth, and it was not working. And there was a moment when, at the same moment, Huntsville, Houston from the US, the ESA, so I think Cologne or either Munich, was working together. The Danish Space Agency was included and was working in this problem, and with Hungary, with Budapest as well. So at least 4 or 5 stakeholders in the same moment working on a solution for this particular experiment. And I think that's the best example of international cooperation during a mission, with time pressure, of course. Really, we had a lot to lose at that point, because, of course, scientific experiments in space are really expensive, and there is a lot of effort put in it. But it was an amazing opportunity to see these people working together, going for one goal and solving it.
Sounds really great.
What Julia is saying is actually that's one really good example, and it reminds me of our time on orbit. When we were on the station, it was 11 people, and that 11 people were from 6 different countries, and out of that 11 people, it was 7 people who flew for the first time, and I think it tells a lot about how space is expanding towards more and more countries, and how space is expanding also towards more and more generations. I think the future is extremely bright when it comes to space industry and space research as well, and to be a part of that, I think it's a huge privilege and also a chance.
Thank you. Space often feels distant to people on Earth, but its impact is often much closer than we think. Which technologies originally developed for space are already quietly influencing our everyday lives?
Many of those. We can mention solar panels. Solar panels are the way that we generate power in space. So, we are basically harvesting the energy of the sun. That's basically pretty much infinite. So that's how we get electricity on ISS. And those are huge solar panels, which actually make ISS as big as a football field. So that's pretty interesting. We have many computer solutions like the mouse that you're using, or sun protecting visors on your helmet, or when you have those carved roads that that has a solution to guide water away, that has been also developed for the space shuttle landing facility. So we have many, or Velcro is not a good example because Velcro is not part of space development, but it's used in space very much. So many solutions. But the biggest message is that not that so when we go to space, we actually go there for two things. We either search life on other, celestial objects. We either search life on Mars, for example, or mainly we go to space to look back on Earth. So we investigate our atmosphere, we investigate our weather, we investigate our geography, and so on and so on. So when we have to justify, space travel and space research, the justification basically is our home planet. And even bigger message is that I think people sometimes don't really realize, but we are actually dependent on space. All the GPS that we use, all the technology that viewers and listeners are watching and listening to us, that's also because of satellites. Electrical or digital payments are because of satellites. The TV is because of satellites. Phone is also so, and 5G as well. So just imagine if all these technology disappears from one day to another. It's pretty much a globally global collapse at that point, because in many cases we don't have a plan B for these. So it's not only that we should justify. I think the justification is very easy, but we should actually realize that we are a little bit dependent on these.
When we are talking about space exploration and technologies, it's very interesting to know how much is about people and how much is about artificial intelligence and automation. Dila, maybe you?
Well, in space exploration, we already use artificial intelligence a lot. If you think about how many stars the astronomers are looking at, they are not looking at those one by one, but with artificial intelligence. And of course, we will use artificial intelligence the more we further away from the Earth, the more we will use, because the more dependent we will be due to communication errors or lags or anything. I just wanted to go back for a moment to the previous topic, is that I think it's really nice to say that space exploration is not going on for space exploration itself. Its only aim is to bring back everything, or the knowledge, or the knowledge back to Earth itself, and to increase the quality of life on Earth. So on the other hand, back to the artificial intelligence part, is that right now, especially in human spaceflight, we use some artificial intelligence, but of course, right now we trust more in humans, I think, and it's limited. But I'm sure this will change. This is changing, and there will be a more heavier reliability on artificial intelligence. And what we see right now with technological advancement all around Earth, with the new data centers they want to put on orbit, and what these new technologies is that they want to utilize space, especially for artificial intelligence, especially for new computer systems, because the power is unlimited up there, or a lot easier to reach. Solar power, and also with having those systems on orbit, you cut a lot of more communications that you don't need to send data per se.
Let me just elaborate. So what Gyula is saying is definitely right. AI will have a much bigger role later, especially when we go to the Mars. We have a communication delay, as he mentioned, and AI will have to make decisions, certain decisions like medical decisions, which will be very exciting. Like just imagine that we have a medical emergency when you go to Mars, and there's just simply no time to communicate between Earth and Mars. So there will have to be an AI who is a little bit more trained medically, and then maybe that AI will have to save an astronaut. And coming back to the question, humans versus robots in space, these are definitely, and part of the same playing field. These are definitely fitting together, and I have many examples for that. When it comes to Mars, again, we deployed many Mars rovers already. Last one was Perseverance a few years ago. Right now, humans cannot go to the Mars because of the radiation, as we mentioned earlier, but Mars rovers, which are basically the size of a car and a few tons, equipped with so many scientific, sensors and measurement devices, those can go to Mars. So there are robots which can do the job that we cannot do for now. But also humans are doing jobs that robots cannot do. For example, on ISS, I was part of an experiment where we really had to get creative. We have a very limited time. We have only 2 weeks. And for that experiment, you had 45 minutes in that day. And we were trying, and the things were just not working out as we expected. So that's where the human side comes in. You have to get creative, you have to get new ideas, you have to figure out something during, when you are communicating with Earth in the meantime. So those were really, really special moments. And of course, we are extremely proud when, when you come to a solution. And also another aspect, advocating for humans in space, there is a human side of the story, what we tend to miss. When we started our training at NASA Houston, I was talking to so many instructors of ours. And many of those who has been there at NASA for a long time, they said that they are working at NASA because, at 69 in July, they were little kids and they saw Neil Armstrong and they saw Buzz Aldrin, stepping out of the lander and, making the first footsteps on the moon. And that was so inspiring for them that they just decided that, okay, they want to do space research, during their life. And that maintained, that persevered. That's the reason that they work at NASA. And that's the reason that they invented so many other stuff. That's the reason that they could train so many other astronauts. So robots and AI will never have that same kind of inspirational power on people that people have on people. And I think it's a really, really powerful message. Many of our, many of the Hungarians, they were also very inspired when Bertalan was flying in 1980. I hope we will have the same effect on the kids right now in Hungary, because they will be the next step. They will be the next scientists, and they will have to figure out actually the solutions that will allow us to go to, for example, to Mars.
Let's make our conversation more closer to Hungary. What do you think about the role of Hungary in space exploration?
We have some history in space sciences already. We used to, with Bertalan, we have sent up the PILA device, which was an amazing radiation measurement device. And after that, ever since, this device is on board the ISS, actually. It is one of the main base equipment of the ISS, the Russian part. So we have some historical legacy, let's say legacy, in space sciences. And ever since, so space exploration is not much more of a material needed, resource needed scientific discipline. We have a possibility there, and we are trying to establish that, enhance our legacies, build on what we already have in the last 40, 50 years we had, and build on that knowledge, build on that legacy, and let's set us out for the future. Because right now, space exploration is booming. There's a great possibility to catch this train, and we want to be on that train.
I think when it comes to a country like ours, we have to build on our really strong foundations. And one of those foundations, as Gyula is mentioning, is dosimetry. We are able to create dosimeters which can measure radiation in a really effective and compact way. That's what that was part of Bertalan's mission 46 years ago. Part of our mission was also a technological demonstration. So when Bertalan was flying the PILA, PILA is a similar word saying that it's small in Hungarian. 46 years later, I was also flying another dosimeter, which was this big. So, you had a car radio size of something 40-something years ago. Now we have a matchbox or something. So it's, technology is advancing, and we really have to be focusing, because we will never have a launch facility in Hungary. We have, geographic limitations. What we have to do is to build on those foundations, as I mentioned. And another foundation like that is basically the mind power. of the Hungarian researchers. Because as Gyula is mentioning, we don't need material resources in terms of that. Space is not dependent on something that you dig out from the ground. What you have to use is your willpower and also the smart engineers and researchers, and that's something that we really have in Hungary. So we are really fortunate. We'll probably never will be as big as the United States or China or India, because those countries are really the big players in space. But we really have a place at the table. For that, or in order to ensure that, you have to act fast, and you have to be basically self-confident as a country. You have to be able to say that, okay, I want to reach that point, and in order to reach that point, I will do this and this and this and these steps. And you have to be deliberate about that. I think that's the key here.
You said some words at the first answer, I think, about isolation. And it's very interesting to know how do you cope with isolation and loneliness?
Okay.
Many stories.
Oh, yes. So we had an isolation training during our basic training period, when the 4 of us, so astronaut candidates, were grabbed or taken together in a military kind of truck, and we were dropped in a location where we didn't know where we are. It was built from containers, ISS similar environment, where we had to work with a commander together. So there was a 5th person, a commander who was like a special forces guy. And we had a daily schedule like the ISS. We didn't have any contact with the outside world. We didn't know where we are. We didn't see the sun. We were completely separated from the outside world. And we had the schedule of the ISS, but also they tried to push us like a psychological pushes, nuggets that they wanted us to make working together harder. Because this was the whole aim of the experiment. It was not an experiment; it was a training and an experiment, of course. But it was a training so that we can learn from ourselves, learn how we cope with this kind of environment. Because the ISS, as Tibor can tell you, it's a completely separated spot from Earth. You have connections. You can talk to your loved ones. You can see them even with nowadays technologies, but still you are out and not on this planet, and it's a completely different situation. So we were taken out, and they were checking us. They were limiting up how much food we eat. They were limiting how much sleep we have. They had a couple of games how they wanted us to just be angry at each other or be hard to work with. We managed it pretty well, and we were really happy. But by that time, we were already working together for a year, the 4 of us. We were friends. We were not competitors. We were friends, comrades in a situation where we wanted to show the best of us, but we were working against us and not against the others. We were in a competition against ourselves to be the best. And so we managed it. It was really fun. We learned a lot, and we don't want to do that again.
When you're in isolation, there are a few key things that you should, learn. First of all, most importantly, you have to be busy. Keeping yourself busy is the key here, because then you don't have too much time to think about stuff that maybe in the outside world. Being bored is very dangerous, also in space, but also in any kind of isolation. So if you keep yourself busy with any kind of work, that basically will make time fly. If you have work to do, that's even better. People are isolating for these kind of experiments, or when they go to the wilderness and do survival trainings, or when they go to the Arctics. They also have half-year missions there on the polar spots, and of course when they go to the International Space Station. And the other thing is that you really have to tap into the things that make you happy. And if you are not that kind of, very social guy that might be, reading or music or any kind of stuff. But I think for majority of the people, it must be friends and family. When I was there on Orbit, on the station, I didn't even realize that I had a bad mood and a hard day before I spoke to my family. So we are really fortunate. In 2025, we already had, basically telephones you can call down from space. You can order flowers. You can order a pizza for your loved ones. Even those are very funny stories. You can email your loved ones. And on a few occasions, we also had, virtual meetings, so I can see their faces, and I can also show them how life is on the International Space Station. So the message here is that whenever I spoke to them, each time, and I also had the same opportunity with friends, a lot of friends actually, in the same occasions, when those conversations ended, that's when I realized it made me so happy. So it filled the gap, which I didn't even know that it's there. It's just something that you need. I always tell that these are the people that, cheer you up when you have a bad day, but these are the same people that you show your achievements when you have a good day. So even if you have bad days, even if you have good days, you reach out to the same people, either to cheer yourself up or, show them what you achieved during that day, what happened to you, to make them a little bit more happy. And I think those are really the most important things when you are in isolation.
Thank you. Берталан, как вы думаете, какие навыки самые важные для космонавта? Вот чтобы быть космонавтом, нужно быть смелым, натренированным, или все-таки есть какие-то другие параметры?
Я думаю, что в конце концов нужно с детства начинать.
Готовиться, да?
Как?
Готовиться.
Готовиться, совершенно правильно. Даже уже с самого молодого. Я иногда получаю такие вопросы от детей, которые вообще невозможно. Взрослые люди не могут так четко, так красиво задавать вопрос. Откуда у них такое знание? Конечно, все зависит от родителей. Очень много зависит от школы, от той ситуации, где они обучаются, с кем они, сколько у них там друзей. Конечно, это очень сложный вот в этом вопросе. И я думаю, что тем больше получают они о космосе, так как сейчас вот этот наш полет венгерский, который в прошлом году делали Тибор, сейчас для молодежи, конечно, совершенно все хотели по телевидению посмотреть, что там случилось, как они работают, когда будут вернуться, как он будет чувствовать себя. То же самое, как 45 лет назад было у меня. Но самое главное именно то, что дать возможность молодым и направить вот в эту сферу. Я уверен, что не все будут, конечно, космонавты, астронавты, не все. Но если уже получил знания по какой-то мере и будет стараться дальше развиваться в этом космическом деле, космос, просто несколько раз уже говорили о том, очень опытными людьми, что нельзя никакой отрасль уже выбирать, который не был связан с космосом. Если юристы, пожалуйста, если там медицина, пожалуйста, есть университеты, когда делают очень научные эксперименты делают, даже в этом я тоже чувствую. Если будет очень технический прогресс, чтобы будет лаборатории на Луне, там же должны работать космонавты. а не роботы, а именно живые космонавты. Их надо кормить. Чем ты будешь кормить? Туда будешь посылать через месяц, каждый месяц. Нет, нужно именно дать возможность и выработать такую технологию, которую можно именно там вырабатывать эти вещи. Там, конечно, космонавты на Луне, тем более на Марсе, они должны не в течение недели работать, а именно, может, и полгода, год, и потом все знания, опыт, которые они набрали, вернуть на Землю, чтобы дальше осуществлять прогресс. Прогресс без этого не получается.
Да, спасибо большое. Вы герой по-настоящему. Я прям сегодня до сих пор не могу поверить, что я разговариваю с первым космонавтом Венгрии. Спасибо вам огромное, что вы здесь. Guys, I think it's evident that you are heroes for ordinary people, for me also. But this is a question. What part of your profession less glamorous, but most important?
There are less glamorous, parts in spaceflight, and there are very practical things that we can mention. There's always, there's a limited number of restrooms on the ISS and the International Space Station. You really have to be careful when you are operating that restroom. Fortunately, there are more than one, but when that thing breaks down, there are lines not standing but lines floating, in front of the restroom. And if you break it down, then you're not the most popular astronaut in that day. And any kind of, and that also circles back a little bit to hygiene. You have to be really clean when you are doing those stuff, because you can also make other astronauts they really, really bad, to be honest. So there are definitely less glamorous parts. And also we kind of have to be comfortable with other human bodies, especially with our crew, because medical emergencies can go to a way which can turn bad, and then you have to be focused and don't deal with the normal stuff that you would deal when you're on Earth. So there are these parts as well. It's not always space cowboys and such.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's completely the opposite of space cowboys.
Yeah.
What we are doing during the training is, I think, at least 60% preparation for different emergencies. So being prepared for everything, and the other 40% is let's say the boring stuff, which is everyday life, which is training and doing simulations of a day that is completely normal. On ISS in the NASA Building 9 at the JSC, Johnson Space Center. So it means training is amazing, and we have done so many amazing things, such as what I already mentioned, but so much more as well. And it's absolutely amazing, and it's amazing to be on such historical places like the Johnson Space Center, working with those people Tibor mentioned, who trained all the NASA astronauts ever since for example, 85 or something like that.
Is there a place for fear, or there is simply no room for it?
I think there's a place for fear. I was not on the rocket though, but I just know from the training part, I was terrified multiple times. The question is whether you can step through it, and you have to always focus on what your goals are, and just decide that you do what you do, and just do one step, as I mentioned. One step is enough to go over your fears as well.
What most people think about is the more dynamic events, like launch and splashdown coming back from space, and those are really those can be dangerous, especially from the high G's, the high accelerations, or the high temperature load when you come back. But the fortunate thing is that you learn so much about it, and you are in day-to-day contact with the same engineers who either develop that rocket or fix that rocket or maintain or actually build that rocket. So you see those guys, you see how they think, and they are the same guys who contact you, and you as a crew, you are pretty much one of the first guys who get to know about things if they go wrong. So we trained for a whole year, and within that year, they still build basically our rocket, especially the second stage. The first stage booster is probably already there with SpaceX, but the second stage is being built basically a few months before our launch. And also the same goes for the capsule. So the spaceship that we use, after every space mission, it gets teared down and they rebuild it basically. So there's a lot of maintenance. So it's a huge process. It takes months. And in any step, things can go wrong, which may delay things. When that happens, they are, the first to admit that, okay, guys, this happened. This will delay, the training, or this will delay the launch maybe like 1 week, and this is how we will fix it. And I think this holds a message also for, everyday life. Is that sometimes it's hard to admit that things went bad and maybe it was your fault. But if you admit it, this is basically the best way to build trust in others. If they don't admit, or if they hide something and someone figures it out, trust immediately disappears. And it's really hard or even impossible to build it back. So when there is trust and when there is knowledge about the systems that we use, then I think there's much less room for fear.
I think that we will get the last one question, because Bertalan already told me something about this. What about you? Is there a moment you will never forget while looking at our planet from above?
Oh, many. So the first, obviously, is when you see your own country. Hungary is a country of 10 million people, much more than Kazakhstan, and we are within the Carpathian Basin, which is really great because those are huge mountains and it's very easy to spot from space. Our ancestors did a really great job when it comes to that. When you see that for the first time, it brings tears immediately. It's really, really hard to collect yourself from that point. It will be an emotional, some minutes for sure. And I specifically remember where I was and which time of the mission was when I saw Hungary for the first time. The first photo that you can make about your country is the same. Or it's also a huge emotional feeling. But generally, I would say is that Earth is much more colorful, much more shiny, pretty much more beautiful than other people would think. We make so many pictures and we make so many videos, none of them will bring back the exact feeling. When you see it with your own eyes, it's just much more. But what I also learned is that because of the speed that we have to go with, it's like 28,000 kilometers per hour, you see Earth from many different angles. You see many different things in pretty much in the same time. You see storms in every 5 minutes. You see mountains, you see islands, you see so many oceans or so much water. Clouds even, which can be really, really beautiful. What I want to mention is that it's not only beautiful, it's not only shiny, it's not only colorful, but it's extremely exciting. It's really, really exciting to look at Earth. I consider myself as someone who gets bored easily about stuff, but when you have the chance and you can just spend like an hour or maybe an hour and a half, which is exactly one orbit around Earth, and you can stay in the cupola and just look at Earth, our cradle, our one and only planet. It's extremely exciting. It's very soothing. It's just you can immediately feel the connection. Everyone else who it's there, and it's really, really beautiful.
Thank you. Dila?
Well, I was not on the station
Yet.
But I want to tell you the story when Tibor showed me the Earth from above, because there was a time when we were in a video conference,
call. Yeah.
And he showed me and a couple of other people the planet, and so I have seen pictures, of course, but seeing it live, even via a computer or an iPad, it was absolutely stunning, and really it made the reality that we really managed to get to the station. You know, Hungary is a really small country, and we managed to accomplish such an amazing feat with of course all those people who we were working in Hunor in Hungary, and all the international partners. But this is something amazing, and I think it shows how amazing space exploration can be, how it can bring together all the different countries, how it can bring together everybody, because we only have one Earth, and we have, of course, space around it, but we have to manage it well. And so it was just an amazing moment that I will remember, I think, for the rest of my life. So yeah.
Thank you guys for your time, for being here. It was really great, inspiring. Thank you so much. Берталан, вам огромное спасибо за то, что были сегодня с нами. Я думаю, что это такое, знаете, какое-то невероятное интервью у нас получилось, потому что не так часто в нашей жизни космонавты дают интервью, тем более на такие интересные темы, и о международном сотрудничестве поговорили, и о том, какие нюансы бывают в профессии космонавтов. Поэтому большое вам спасибо. Ну а вы, друзья, оставляйте свои вопросы, комментарии, делитесь этим видео, подписывайтесь на канал. До встречи.